Good afternoon. In this video, we're going to look at Chapter 1, Part 1, and we're going to focus on the ternary form. So in this slide, we're going to look at the form and expectations of a multi-movement piece. Now, we have a lot of standards or expectations to a symphony, to a sonata, to a string quartet. Each symphony is going to consist of 4 movements or 4 big sections. It's very much similar to the chapters of a book, okay? The first movement is always going to be in what we call sonata allegro form, and it's usually very serious, and the tempo or the speed of the music is always very fast. The second movement is contrasting to the first, okay? And so the tempo is going to be slow, and it's going to be more lyrical, more introspective. And lots of the forms could be a ternary form, could be theme and variations, could be rondo. We're going to look at, in this lecture, what we call ternary form, and that's going to be an ABA style form. Now, continuing on with multi-movements, the third movement to a symphony or a string quartet, that's going to be your dance movement. So what we hear is typically, it's going to be a minuet and trio, okay? And that's going to be in an ABA form. It's a moderate tempo. The A section is going to be the minuet, and the trio section, which is the B section, is going to be more of a contrasting section. And then finally, with symphonies, string quartets, that fourth movement kind of concludes everything and wraps everything up. Lots of times the fourth movement could be in sonata allegro form or a rondo form, or sometimes a theme and variations. But the fourth movement almost always is very fast and vivacious. Again, the goal of the fourth movement is to kind of bring the work to a close. So ternary form. Ternary form is a 3-part form, and what we'll have is a statement, we'll have a contrasting section, and then we'll have that statement repeated again, okay? Lots of times what we'll use to describe the form is an ABA form. Now, in this example, instead of using a big form, they use the melody Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So again, we have the first part, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, How I Wonder Where You Are, with the A section, and then the B section kind of comes as a contrasting, and then we go back to the A section. So let's listen to this, and let's see if we can identify the 2 contrasting sections to this piece. This is the B section. Now we go back to the A section. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a piece that's in this ternary form. Okay, and the work we're going to look at is the second movement to Mozart's Piano Concerto in C major. So the piece was written around 1786. And again, it's a solo piano concerto, so you're going to have a pianist supported by the orchestra. And with the concerto, you get this, the pianist will get this very virtuosic sections and so forth of the piece. Most concerto are always in 3 movements, and you have the first movement is going to be a sonata allegro form. The second movement is going to be a slow movement. In this case, it's going to be a ternary form. And then the third movement, or the final movement, is going to be either in sonata allegro form or a rondo form, and going to be a fast movement. Remember, most piano concertos most concertos don't usually have 4 movements. They usually omit that minuet movement. Okay. So with this piece, we're going to look at the second movement, and it's going to be in this ternary form. It's going to have an ABA section. So when we listen to the second movement, it's going to start off with the main melody being played by the strings. It's very lyrical, and in the harmonies are going to be played by the woodwinds, and it's going to have this kind of triplet pulse underneath, kind of pushing the music forward. Let's listen. So in this slide, we're going to take kind of a bird's eye view of this second movement. So we're going to listen to the A section again, that A main melody. We get that very lyrical melody played in the strings. The B section, Mozart's going to create a contrast, okay? And well, how does he do this? And he does this by moving to different keys through modulation. He's going to be going through a different series of key areas. And the A section is in a major key, and we're going to explore a few other different major keys and also go to a few minor key areas. And then when we slowly transition back to the A section again, it's similar, but let's listen for now the A section when it comes back. The piano is going to be playing the main melody, and we're not the strings. And then finally, the coda. The coda is the ending part of a piece, and the coda is designed to kind of wrap everything up and bring the piece to a close. So let's go through these sections, and let's listen to each section and see if we can hear a difference between the A and B sections. And then when we come back to the A section again, let's listen for the piano playing that melody. So the A section in the beginning sounds like this. Now, that B section, or the contrasting section, is going to sound like this. And remember, it's going to have a lot of modulations and the melody is going to be exploring different key areas. Let's listen. Next, after this, we're going to slowly transition back to this A section again, and the piano is going to be playing the main melody. Let's listen. And then finally, we have the coda. Now, moving on, we're going to talk about the sonata allegro form. And this form is probably the most important form that comes out in the classical period. Can't stress that enough. We definitely want to understand what this form is about, and we want to understand the components that go into making up this form. So it originates in the classical period, and it's the standard first movement for most all instrumental compositions. Okay, and that includes, if it's a symphony, the first movement is going to be in sonata allegro form. String quartet, first movement is going to be in sonata allegro form. A sonata, whether it's a piano sonata or an instrumental sonata, it's going to be in sonata allegro form. If it's a octet wind quintet, whatever, a multi-movement form, the first movement is going to be in this form, okay? And it's dramatic, it's very serious, and the tempo is always going to be a fast tempo, okay? And so the second movement will be a slow tempo, third movement will be a moderate tempo, third, fourth movement will be the fast tempo again. But again, the first movement is always going to be a fast tempo and in the sonata allegro form. Continuing talking about the sonata allegro form, this first movement is all about drama and conflict within a single movement. Now, the drama and the conflict come out over three big sections. And when we talk about drama and conflict, it's usually going to be melodies or melodic material presented in a specific key in the exposition or opening section, and then in that middle section, the melody is taken apart, maybe deconstructed, and we kind of go into different key areas. And then in the recapitulation of the final section, we kind of put everything back together. So there are three main sections to a sonata allegro form, and these three terms definitely are something that we want to know and be able to identify. So the first section is going to be the exposition. Now, the exposition is the opening section to a symphony, string quartet. It presents all the thematic material. In fact, the exposition is usually played twice in any symphony or piano sonata. They repeat the exposition. And the idea is they repeat it because they want the listener to really be familiar with all of the material, thematic material that's presented. Next, in the middle part of the section, this form, is what we call the development section. And in this section, the composers are going to take all the themes. Usually we have two themes in the exposition. We have the first theme and the second theme. And what they'll do is they'll develop it. Maybe they'll deconstruct the theme. Maybe they'll venture onto new key areas. Maybe if the main theme is in a major key, maybe they'll play the theme in a minor key. Maybe they'll play the theme with some counterpoint. So basically, it's the development sections, the composer's time to show how crafty they are. And then, after the development section, we transition and we go back into what we call the recapitulation. Okay, and the recapitulation is the third part of this sonata allegro form, and the recapitulation is basically kind of a restatement of this exposition. Okay, all the themes are played back in their same order, and then in addition, all of the themes in the recapitulation traditionally are played in the home key or the tonic key of the work. So if the work is in C major or the symphony is in C major, well, in the recapitulation, the first theme and the second theme are usually played in the key of C major. Now, we do have two other parts to this form that are optional. Okay. The first is an optional introduction. And lots of times, if you remember, the sonata allegro form, the tempo of a sonata allegro form is a very fast tempo. It's usually like allegro. Lots of times with like Haydn symphonies or with even some Beethoven symphonies or even piano sonatas, you have a slow introduction. Okay, and maybe the introduction brings up material that you're going to be using in the symphony, or maybe it's just to set the mood. So we have introductions that are optional. Okay, not all symphonies have them, or string quartets. And then we also have codas that are optional. Okay, and again, a coda is it's a continuation of a piece where they're trying to bring the work to a close. And so forth. We kind of bring the ending. We kind of cement the ending. Okay, and this is an optional section as well. Sonata allegro form, and the first part is going to be the exposition. So if we see here, what happens is you're going to have the first tonal area or the main theme is presented in the home key. So we have a piano sonata in the key of C major. First theme is going to be in the key of C major. Okay, we play the theme and then we transition or modulate, and we have the second area, which always usually has a contrasting theme. Okay, and the second theme is always played in what we call the dominant. Okay, so If we're in the key of C major, well, that second theme is going to be in the key of G major, which is the dominant key of C major. And then we'll have closing material, which kind of wraps everything up, okay? And that's basically the exposition in a nutshell, okay? And if you see on this diagram, you see the first theme in purple, you see this little bridge, and the second theme is in red, and then the closing themes we have green. And if you notice these two little dots there, well, if in the music, if you have two bar lines and two dots, they're called repeat signs. And that just means they have this in here as well, because typically the exposition's repeated, because they want the listeners to be familiar with all of the material in the exposition. Because when we get to that development section, we're going to be taking apart the melody or the second theme, and maybe we're playing it like in inversion or augmentation. So we really want to know what the melody is about. So when they vary it, we can identify it. Now, after the exposition, we have the development section. And the development section is where all that drama happens, okay? And when we talk about drama, it's not about, the drama in the classical period in the development sections about taking a theme and moving to all different key areas, doing dramatic shifts, okay, maybe so forth, okay? That's the drama that we're listening to, okay? The themes are exposed and they're developed, okay? Maybe the theme, maybe it's stretched out, maybe it's shrunk, maybe it's flipped upside down, okay? Maybe they add counterpoint to the development section. It's usually harmonically unstable, okay? And, we're modulating the different keys. And then after the development section, sometimes the development sections are very short, sometimes they're longer. It depends on the composer's preference. We then transition back to the home key, to the home key, getting back for that restatement, what we call the recapitulation. So now, after the development section, we come back, we have this recapitulation, this restatement of all the main themes. The first theme is being played. Again, it's going to be played in that home key. So if we're in the key of C major, we're back to C major again, okay? If we're in the key of, E flat major or F minor, we're back in those home keys. And then we have a transition. And then the second theme, which in the exposition was played in a different key, was played in that dominant key. The second theme now is played in that tonic key. Okay, the closing themes are going to be presented in that tonic key as well, or close to the tonic key. So we're all basically, the idea for the recapitulation is to restate these themes, but kind of ground us back home into this final tonic key. Okay, that's the purpose of this recapitulation. So you hear each of these themes, but they may be slightly altered because, instead of modulating from the tonic to the dominant like they did in the exposition, well, he's going to stay in that home key or that tonic key. So this concludes Chapter 11, Part 1. In this video, we looked at ternary form, or an ABA form, and we also went over the basics of what sonata allegro form is about. Please continue to watch the second part of the Chapter 11, where we're going to go into more detail talking about sonata allegro form.